Salut YouTube, welcome back to my New Zealand versus France culture shock series. So if you haven't seen part 1 of this video, I highly recommend you check that out first, where I talk about the first 10 culture shocks. So I'll link that in the description box below. But if you have already seen it, let's talk about the next 10 culture shocks entre la France et la Nouvelle-Zélande. C'est parti! Okay, cultural shock number 1 is that sweatpants are a no-go. So as part of the kind of French refinement, it's actually kind of important how you dress and present yourself, which was very depressing to learn as a New Zealander, because our weekend uniform is like skinny jeans, hoodie, your hair done up in a messy top knot, you know, like pretty casual. And yeah, you've probably heard about New Zealanders. Yep, we can walk around barefoot, it's nice and clean. We'll go from our home, we'll walk down to the corner shop, which we call a dairy, barefoot, no problem, or in jandals at least. So we can keep it pretty casual, to say the least. Whereas in France, if you go out like that, even just down to the store to grab some milk or whatever it is, you'll get those looks. You know the looks. You know the ones. And it's not even about just going outside, it can be about the inside kind of house rules as well. Like, I've noticed that here, you don't really wake up on the weekend and stay in your PJs all day. In terms of like boyfriend versus girlfriend as well, like I have this gorgeous Eastern European friend of mine who's living in France here with her French boyfriend, and on the weekend she'd just wear some track pants, and I'm sure because it's her, they were very skinny, flattering track pants, like showing off her body, so not even the big slobby ones that I would wear. And he actually asked her to stop wearing her home clothes around the place because it looked a little bit slobby. I think there's definitely a thing here where you don't wear that oversized t-shirt and your trackies and walk around barefoot because you look a little bit homeless. And for us, that's cool. You can go to university like that, you can go down to the shop like that, you can go supermarket shopping like that. But here, c'est pas possible. So number 2 is a little bit random, but this is about the cars in France. So I find the cars in France actually really cute. There's loads of really little tiny smart cars or just small compact cars. And even if you are wealthy, you know, usually in the States or in UK, Australia, New Zealand, in general, I'd say, if you're wealthy, you buy those big cars to kind of show it off a little bit. Or if you've got a family, you'll have those huge sort of big soccer mum cars, Range Rovers, etc. I mean, I'm sure there's people that do have really nice, flashy, big cars, but I've just noticed it way less. It just seems to be way less attached to your ego as well to buy a big flashy car for the French, which is quite nice. Way less pressure for me. Woo! And I will say that even though the French have quite the reputation for being terrible drivers, I think they're probably the best at parking in the world. I have seen cars parallel park into spaces that are the size of the car, and you need some skill to do that. So number 3 is about the fashion, and yeah, I know that France has a reputation for being the most fashionable place in the world. It's where fashion was born, and yes, when you're walking around on the streets, everyone looks very smart and chic. But what I was kind of shocked about is that it's very homogeneous and it kind of resembles a uniform. I remember when I arrived in France, I feel like every single French girl was wearing black skinny jeans that were slightly too short for her and exposed her ankle, or maybe this kind of dark red burgundy color jean or pant, and they'd be wearing a simple top with a black leather jacket and a scarf, and wearing no or very little makeup. And if they are wearing makeup, just maybe a bit of mascara, maybe some BB cream or a nice sheer foundation maximum, and a lip color. I find here, even if you dye your hair, you dye a very, very natural color. Like, you don't really take big risks. You don't see a lot of pixie cuts or bleach blonde or, let's say, reds or deep purples or kind of more creative things going on with the hair. And I think it's because in France the beauty standards are really around I didn't make much effort. I woke up like this. Again, yeah, it looks nice, it looks chic, don't get me wrong, But I mean, you can really see the difference when you go to London, for example, and everyone's wearing what they want. They do whatever they want with their hair, anything goes. You see some good sides, you see some really bad sides, but there's freedom and there's creativity going around in the way you express yourself and the way you dress. Number 4, I mean, I don't want to be cliche, but I don't think I can mention culture shock with France without mentioning French administration. My favorite. I just remember when I arrived here feeling like everything was so hard and so slow. Like, you can't just stroll into your bank and get an appointment with the advisor. You need to book. Why? Because the appointment will take 1 hour instead of 15 minutes. Why? Oh, because there are huge amounts of forms and paperwork and documents to provide and things to go through. Why does it have to be so hard? Why do things have to be so slow? I mean, and it's always in person, it's always like physical copies. You always have to bring the original and photocopy, original and photocopy. Why can't we just submit the documents online? Why can't we just text the internet company that we want to join and they just set us up through a text by text process like they have in other sort of modern countries? It just hasn't really hit France yet. There's sort of like this big paranoia that we need all these documents and we need to be safe and secure, and otherwise, I don't know, people are going to steal our identities or something bad is going to happen if we don't pile paperwork onto every single process you can imagine. Another culture shock I had here about the food capital of the world is that a lot of the restaurants, especially once you get out of Paris, are quite the same. So chicken, lamb, veal, steak tartare, and then for the desserts, crème brûlée, tiramisu, mousse au chocolat, melting heart, chocolate pudding. It just kind of seems very, very similar from one French bistro to another. Of course, in Paris, you've got a lot more choice, but I think we're kind of spoiled in New Zealand because we've got that nice proximity to Asia. We have a lot of amazing Asian fusion style restaurants, Indian, whereas here, you kind of have to go to special neighborhoods to really get the choice that you're after, I find. There's less diversity per square kilometer in terms of restaurants, if that makes sense. Number 6 is that you definitely have to be a little less trusting here. When I arrived in Paris, I was so fresh, I was so naive. I would be on the metro with my handbag wide open. I would just never have the reflex to think, okay, you've actually got to be careful with your handbag here. And I'd be chatting away to a friend and they'd be like, oh, Rosie, what are you doing? Like, close your bag. And I'm like, oops, my bad. Thankfully, nothing's happened to me where I've had something stolen, a handbag, a phone or whatever, but I have seen it happen in front of me. I've had friends who've had things stolen. I've had friends who have just been eating at a restaurant with their work laptop down by their foot, and when they go to leave the restaurant in the evening, it's no longer there. You've just got to be a little bit more wary, which took me a long time to get used to because my default is very low crime, you can trust everyone, so it's just a kind of different atmosphere, I guess, and you've got to be a little bit more careful with your things than you do back home for sure. Point number 7 I think is maybe a little bit unfair because I know New Zealanders are a little bit of an exception when it comes to being super cool and laid back, but I definitely noticed a difference in attitude of people, and I don't want to go into too much detail because I think I'm going to do a whole nother video on this, but in New Zealand the attitude is warm and open and friendly. You smile. The other day my friend told me that there was a woman with her on the train and she accidentally missed her stop, and the train was a sort of fork railway system, so it was going off in the complete wrong direction for her. And so she felt quite stuck, and she was just surrounded by offers of rides. People will drive her to where she needs to go. People were offering that she comes back to their house and waits for her friends while they pick her up, and that's just the right Kiwi thing to do. Whereas here, I just find in general the attitudes are distrusting between people. And I don't want to generalize, but I've definitely noticed that there's less positivity and upbeat moods around me than I have back home. Another culture shock I had is that the French children are so well behaved. So even at the ages of 4 or 6, they'll be seated quietly and discreetly at a restaurant, and they'll be eating their meals with the adults, and they won't be trying to talk over the adults, and they will, you know, ask if they can sort of jump into the conversation, or they'll do so when there's a natural gap in the conversation. I kind of feel in New Zealand, when you're having dinner with people that have kids, the kids run the show. Like, it's all about them, it's all about getting them to eat. They'll refuse what they're eating, they'll talk over you, they'll butt in, they'll have to be told, please don't speak while an adult is speaking, and then they'll just do it again. I don't know, maybe we're less disciplined with our children, less cadré, as they say in French, and I think that's definitely the case. I'll never forget going to my boyfriend's cousin's house, and she's got these two gorgeous girls, and I think they were around 7 and 9 at the time or something like that, and the eldest one was running into the kitchen while the mum was cooking, and she's like, Mum, can I please help you set the table? And I was just like, whoa, stop the clock. What just happened there? I do have some theories about how they achieve children like this, which as I said, I'll do a video on that. But in the meantime, I do recommend reading Patricia Dickerman's Bringing Up Baby book, which explains a lot of the key principles really well. And that will of course be in the notes below. Number 9 is about the French people and their holidays. When I first arrived in France, it was September, and I heard a lot about la rentrée. I was like, what is la rentrée? It's this huge moment of the year where people are back to school, but also adults are back to work. Why? Because they took basically all of August off. In France, you usually take 3 to 4 weeks off in the summer, and that's just totally normal and totally cool. And once I realized how much leave you got here once you started working, so you've got the 5 weeks minimum, plus you often get extra above and beyond that, I was just blown away. And so what it means is that you can travel easily. I mean, the French that I'm around always seem to be going to Greece, to Portugal, to Croatia. It's just so casual. They live very beautiful lives in that way. And coming from the other side of the world, a little island in the middle of nowhere, that was really shocking to me. But to defend the French, because I know there's a little bit of a stereotype about them being lazy, we earn these holidays because we work way more hours, I find, in the days, and then we have more holidays to compensate. So we may be doing 10, 11-hour days as a standard, and then get lots of holidays. In New Zealand, we only get 20 days of leave, but at 5:30 you're out the door and you're enjoying the rest of your evening. So I think it's just a different system. Culture shock number 10, or number 20 if you've watched both videos, is that the French are so polite. And I know I've mentioned this before, but you always say bonjour to everyone you sort of interact with or pass. When you hop into the elevator, you say bonjour. When you go into the doctor's office, you say bonjour. You're always saying merci. Like, even between, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, if your boyfriend just lets you go through the door first or whatever, you always say merci, or if he serves you water, merci. And it's kind of funny because, of course, we're polite in New Zealand, but I don't think we say thank you so much as they do here. Here I feel like the manners are very structured and in place, which is super nice. They're very, very polite people, the French. So guys, if you've made it all the way here to the end of my video, I salute you. Let me know if you want me to do a part 3, because I could keep talking about this stuff for hours. And please let me know what your culture shocks were. I'd be really interested to hear what other culture shocks are coming from different base countries. But until then, I wish you a great day, and I'll see you soon. A bientôt!